As I had mentioned earlier, for children, going into a step-family environment represents many changes. When first marriage family is separating, generally people's experiences tend to go all in the same direction. There tends to be loss for everyone. But when there's a step-family coming into creation, things between the parents and the children become very different. So for the parents, it's a new thing, it's exciting, it's all to be done. But for the children, this is actually another kind of loss. They're used to having exclusive time with their biological parent when they're in the single parent family. And so when that parent repartners, the children actually have another loss where they're losing exclusive time with their parent at the same time that they're expected to take in a new adult. So it's important to remember that the children and the biological parent now are not having similar experiences. And so for the children, this can represent a real feeling of being left behind, where they've made it through the transition of the divorce, but that was with their parent in their back pocket as their strong support person. And now that parent is getting involved with somebody else, and what's going to happen to them? And are they still going to have their times at the baseball game, or their favorite time on Saturday morning, or all of the children usually have touchstone kinds of experiences or rituals in the family, like sitting in a favorite chair reading a story at night before bed, or watching a favorite movie, or that Saturday morning with Dad out on our bicycles. So it's a good idea for parents to try to remember or notice what are their children's touchstone events, and to try to make them still occur even as the new relationship is getting up and running, and of course it needs to have its own time as well in order to develop. And it's not to say that those relationships can't occur. Of course they do need to occur. It's just a question of noticing that for the children this is not as exciting as it is for the adult, and that they're going to need some time to catch up with what's going on. Sometimes children in step families have a real need to have time just with their biological parent and siblings, or just their biological parent, to be able to kind of anchor and remember and know that this really is their primary place. And then once they have enough of that, they're better able to take on the kinds of changes that we want them to be able to adapt to. For children, sometimes their birth order changes. They may go from being an only child to one of three. They may end up going from being the oldest to being the middle, or they may go from being the youngest to being somewhere in the middle. And so this is a fundamental thing for children, what their birth order is. And so when that shifts and changes through the introduction of other children, it takes a lot of getting used to. Because in families, whether we mean to do it or not, we do treat oldest differently than youngest, and middle children have different experiences as well. So when a child's birth order changes, it's a fundamental change in the way their family operates around them, and it takes some time to get on board with that. So it's good for parents if they can name that and say, gee, it must be, what's it like now to have younger children here, because you've always been used to being the youngest, or you've always been the oldest, and now Alice is here and she's older than you. Gee, what's that like? And just being gently curious about what kind of experiences they're having in these new kinds of family structures. Also for children, when the step-parent relationship came into their life, has a very big impact on what kind of relationship develops. So if they were very young when the step-parent came into their life, say they were 2, then one would expect that if things are minimally supportive and reasonable, that they will develop a very parent-like relationship with that adult over their childhood. So by the time they're 10 or 12 or 14, that new step-parent will have become very much like a parent, or what I would call high in parental status in their world. However, if that new adult comes into their life when they're 14, then it's very unlikely that that very parent-like relationship will develop. They might like them very much, they might enjoy spending time with them, they just won't be able to put them in that parent category in quite the same way, because that category requires spending childhood years with a child, and it can't just be given away or agreed to if it's not real. It's another one of those garden things. It has to grow. You can't just take it or have it or give it, move it around as would be convenient. So sometimes language becomes very important, because say you say the term stepfather. For somebody for who the parental status is very high, say they've had that man in their life since they were very, very little, and they actually can't remember when he wasn't there, that man may be the equivalent of their dad, especially if their biological father is not participating in their lives. This may be dad. So the use of a term like stepfather gets in the way, because the step is not right for them. The step feels offensive for them, because this is my dad, or this is my sister. Don't use that step word, because this is my sister. They're 100% there psychologically. Conversely, if you use this term like stepfather to a 14-year-old for whom this relationship is only 1 year old, then for them the father's wrong. The step might be okay, but this is no kind of father. This is mom's boyfriend. He's not my dad. I have my dad. And so we have to be careful about what kind of language we use, so that we're more accurate to what's really going on, and not just an idea of what we want to happen. These relationships are very different, the ones that are brand new, the ones that are very established, the ones that operate just like biological relationships, the ones that excuse me, operate more like a new team member that people don't know very well. So we need to be accurate in how we understand what's going on, so that the children's experience will make sense. Otherwise, the children will have to spend a lot of time fighting with us to get them to understand that the idea that we have about how they should feel is actually not how they do feel. And then lastly, in a step family, part of what helps those relationships to develop is to try to have new traditions that are about the new group. Just as if you'd been on a baseball team for many years, and then now all of a sudden we have new team members. Just activities or shared experiences that help develop some shared history among the new people. So not to replace what's private for the biological siblings and parent-child relationships, but something that's new, that's of the new group, so that over time those relationships can start having some of their own history. A very useful place to go to for information about step families is called the National Step Family Resource Center. It is what has become of the Step Family Association of America. So if you Google Step Family Association of America, you will get to the National Step Family Resource Center. They have excellent articles. They have a bookstore, online bookstore, and events for people to attend to learn more about developing their step family. If you get stuck, get some help. Unfortunately, most counselors don't have specialized training in working with step families, but at the same time, if they don't feel they have that expertise, then they can certainly refer you to someone who does. These can be tricky transitions, and often the ideas that we bring forward from counseling programs don't have the sophistication to go into a step family environment. However, they can help you with communication, getting the ideas on the table. You can be reading on your own, and many counselors do have some additional training in working with step families. So if you get stuck, get some help, and either the website reading or a consultation, so that you can adjust whatever needs to be adjusted so that this evolution can carry on. And remembering that communication is really key. Communicating with your children, communicating with your partner, and communicating to the degree that you need to in order to get underneath some of the implicit assumptions that we all have about how a family works. I mean, it can be simple things like, can you leave wet towels on the floor in the bathroom? Or can you eat pizza in the living room on Friday night and leave the boxes there? I mean, I can't tell you, in the groups on step families that I participated in, there were so many discussions about table manners. Table manners became sort of a lightning rod for cultural differences between two families. So there's all kinds of things to talk about in terms of why people do things certain ways in different households. And it's those kinds of discussions that are really worth their weight in gold for helping the two families to understand each other and to create something new together.